I'd like to welcome everyone. Welcome to the Honourable Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. B.C. Jonas, our keynote speaker, the Chief Planner from Mumbai, Uma Adu Similarly. Unfortunately, Uma couldn't be here. We had a little bit of a visa issue, so we're going to stream her and then we're going to talk to her by Skype. Rashid Sidat, Head of Planning at GPG, to all our speakers, to all our distinguished guests from all spheres of government, academia, private sector, and civil society, welcome. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers of the event. To put something like this together requires quite a lot of effort, and it's been a few months in the making. So to the ERLN team, to Matt, to Kirsten, who worked very hard, the rest of the GTAC Economic Development team, thank you so much. The TIPS team, Kate, Saul, and Rizal, the simple organizer, has been working frantically behind the scenes to get all of this stuff done. Thank you so much. And of course our partners in this conference, the VITs, who have collaborated with us to make this event possible. So thank you. The ERLN has started as an idea in a GTAC Economic Development team meeting a few years ago. And it really has grown from an idea and a willingness to join the dots in the economic space to a network that now connects hundreds of people across the country and across our borders in a network that looks at what it means to do economic development at some national regions. So we're quite happy with the progress that it's made. And it has really grown from strength to strength. We've had lots of individual meetings about various topics, and we felt that it was time to try and put all of this together in one conference. So welcome to the first ERLN National Conference. So, what do we all want from our region? We all want faster growth, greater productivity, less inequality, good health and educational services and infrastructure and facilities, better housing, better service delivery, provision of water, energy, public transport services, infrastructure, social cohesion. These are all things that we want for our national economy and for our sub-national regions. And it is a complex set of goals. And it has multiple actors, multiple responsibilities, and what we've found out is that the only way to actually get stuff done is to collaborate. And so we put a lot of emphasis on championing collaboration. Welcome, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much. I was jumping when I was about to leave the scene. Sometimes it makes it feel like you are at your funeral. And more urgency because of the challenges our economy is in as we speak. So it's no longer, I think we must also, in our thinking, it's not just the normal development discussion and theoretical discussion. There is pressure facing us, given the global low growth scenarios and the underperformance of our own national or domestic economy. These matters have become almost urgent to deal with. There are over 30 cluster initiatives in South Africa, concentrated in key cities, regions of KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and Western Cape. Each of these initiatives is unique in their structure, evolution, operations, but they generally have in common the purpose of upgrading the competitiveness of firms in the cluster, which also leads to improved regional competitiveness. Individual firms need access to information and specialized skills, which most small firms lack the resources to access. Cluster initiatives provide firms affordable access to relevant skills and knowledge critical for improved performance. This type of support is critical when building inclusive economies and creating opportunities for emerging businesses to enter into established value chains. Broadening ownership and participation is a key part of democratizing our economy and combating anti-competitive behavior and overcoming entry barriers that inhibit SMMEs from entering established value chains. Government and academia can play a key role by supporting the development of linkages and connections between firms and enabling access. But something we need to pay far more attention to in deepening our regional economic development initiatives is the critical importance of building trust between government, industry, and industry players. This trust lies at the heart of being able to share knowledge and successfully manage the broadening of participation in the economy. We need to guard against preconceived notions of government and private sector. And I think it has become a very big debate, this thing about the role of private sector and government and in the economy. It's in a sense, I think, an important conversation, but it could also equally become almost a useless conversation, almost academic discussion. Because I think we must also recognize that both have a critical role to play. But if we sustain the dichotomies that government stands this side and the private sector stands this side, we're likely to lose the possibility of synergizing action and ensuring that better coordination between government and the private sector is attained. It is not surprising that the most important skill set required for working with clusters are soft skills such as relationship building, negotiation, and conflict resolution. If regional economic development rests on the four pillars of a supportive national environment, economic connectedness, economic clusters, and leveraging the importance of place, then to successfully achieve and bring together these four dynamics is a meaningful way that requires collaborative leadership. Thank you very much.
So, I would like to say welcome to Uma, but I don't think she can hear us right now, but we will have the opportunity to Skype after the session. So, if we can just bring up that video. Thanks.
This conference, Economies of the Regions, itself sounded quite fascinating to me. Because we saw our regions as just regions and never saw them as being part of the national economies and as part of the economies of the constituent bodies within the regions. Not in the sense that this conference is trying to address it. I must also apologize for not personally coming there and presenting this in your presence. Unfortunately, the organizers as well as myself tried our best to make this happen, but unfortunately it did not happen and we had to give up. Nevertheless, I am very grateful for this opportunity to be able to present in this manner directly to you. I hope this is audible and you can understand what I am saying. Once this presentation is over, we will put the Skype connection on and I can take some questions and respond to the same. Presenting the context of India and how it is divided into its constituents, India is a federal state with 3 levels of government at national level, state level and local level. The local level is both urban and rural. In cities it's called urban local government and in rural areas it's called rural local government. And administratively speaking, after the state level, the division is different. It's into, states are divided into districts and the districts are divided into urban and rural areas. So unlike in many international scenarios where a city consists of several districts, for us in India, the districts contain several cities, hundreds of cities probably, and thousands of rural areas. Traditionally, the land, urban development, housing, etc. are the subjects which are assigned to the states to deal with by the Constitution of India. Therefore, detailed legislation and projects in these fields are undertaken by the various state governments or sub-state level agencies, whereas the national government still plays a role in terms of coming out with the national policies and model legislation, while the states can actually take the model legislation, adopt with or without modification, and enact them as state legislations. The focus on spatial planning actually happened in India between 1965 and 2005. 1965 and 1975. That's when the spatial growth happening outside of city boundaries was recognized as a very significant feature, and attempts were made to address this using various instruments. That is a period when a lot of institutions were created. Town planning and regional planning legislation was enacted by various states, and housing boards were created to provide public housing. Industrial development was promoted by industrial development agencies, both in terms of actual industrial promotion and infrastructure for industry was also promoted by this manner. And with this background, the most urbanized state in India must be presented as the state of Maharashtra, of which Mumbai is the capital. This state is almost 50% urban, and 50% of the urban of this state is living in an area identified as Mumbai metropolitan region around the city of Mumbai, including the city of Mumbai. And the Mumbai metropolitan region covers 4,300 square kilometers area, which is 10 times larger than the area of the city of Mumbai. A lot of things were happening in our region in the last 10 years, starting from 2005 when the great floods occurred in this region, and almost the whole region was drowned on July 26th July of 2005 towards the end of the day, and for 24 hours the region came to almost standstill. However, being very resilient city and region, everything was normal in 48 hours, which is the unbelievable and commendable spirit of this region. It survives against all odds. So Mumbai and the region qualify to be resilient by inherent nature, which goes a long way in actually realizing a lot of planning objectives as well. So the floods also brought focus onto the regional drainage issue, which was being neglected so far. So we are very happy that it was brought forth. This disaster has brought it into focus. And there were many background studies done in this region on transportation, modeling, water resource development, business plan, concept plan, and environmental status report, ESR. All of them happened in the last 10 years at various stages, and all of them proved to be extraordinarily useful for preparation of the new regional plan. They acted as great input material. Municipalities are finding increasingly difficult to provide land for locating landfill sites and for transportation corridors and water resource development. So by its very nature of this difficulty, solutions at the regional scale are emerging by default. So the regional transportation solutions have been there for a long time in this region. However, regional solid waste management and regional water resource development are fairly new, and they are emerging, and soon it appears that they will become quite successful. So if these have to happen very seriously, institutions like MMRDA also have to acquire new capacities and play a much larger role in the execution of projects than what they are doing today. And while doing this, not only MMRDA but need for other similar agencies is also being felt at regional level. So some of the agencies that are already promoted by MMRDA are Unified Mumbai Metropolitan Transport Authority, which is looking into designing of transportation systems, integrating them with each other, then providing safety systems, actually conducting research and R&D and data and surveys Also integration of fare structures, so unified ticketing systems, seamless integration of one mode, travel by one mode into another. All of this is being discussed and being put into place. A lot of them are actually seeing the light of the day already. So very encouraging, the regional institutions are emerging. Then public debate is also going on, both on public platforms as well as in courts of law, about regional and city development plans and the developments not being very fair with all constituents of their jurisdictions. So certain functions of the region are also being challenged. Every decision is being challenged. I think on the long run, this is a very maturing kind of debate, and this will also keep us on toes all the time, and any imbalance that is intended or unintended can be actually brought back to balancing situation by this method, and we are happy that this is happening. And the Metropolitan Planning Committee, which has elected members from all over the region representing big cities, small cities and rural constituents, will bring far more balanced regional representation into the regional planning and development framework compared to what MMRDA's board is able to do today.
And reindustrialization agenda. We will try and connect with Uma via Skype after she's doing it. Okay, so thanks.
Good morning. I think I just need to connect also, but I have a couple of preliminary points to make before I get to the presentation. Well, firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much. I was saying that thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today. This certainly looks like a very interesting conference. We obviously acknowledge the inputs of the Deputy Minister and Uma, whom I met about 2 years ago at a conference in Moscow. But I didn't have the opportunity at that time to listen to her in second sessions, so at least I got some sense. And certainly I think the synergies between what she was saying and what I'm about to say. Also, I have to say that I have to acknowledge, I think, a lot of my old friends, comrades, colleagues from the past, and certainly new ones as well, peppered around the room. But before I get to the presentation, I just thought, in many ways, yesterday was like a very interesting. One of the radio reporters said that there were lots of breaking news items, and one that I'm going to focus on is obviously the collapse of the bridge, the tragic incident in Johannesburg, in Gauteng. And obviously, we pass on our condolences to the people, to the families of the people who have died, and certainly wish those who are injured a speedy recovery. But I thought that in many ways it's very kind of emblematic of what happens in this part of the world. The one thing is that this happened during the Sandton Eco Mobility Festival. So those of you that know about it, the Mayor of Joburg did this very, it is a very brave thing, where he closed off parts of Sandton and said that people should use public transport for the entire month of October. And just a few kilometers away from the road closures, we had this tragic incident, which in turn contributed to massive congestion. And this is what happens in the city region, is that one incident like that has, I think, multiple impacts on the economy, on congestion, on kids arriving at times, on time at school and so on. And really, what we do in those circumstances and how we respond is very important. And I think we saw some very good sort of examples of leadership certainly by the mayor. He was there throughout the night, even from the private sector, from the company that was responsible. The CEO was there all the time. And you know, the issues around collaboration between the public and private sectors, between different spheres of government, Department of Labour, the city of Joburg, etc. And in a way, I think that what we're trying to do in the Gauteng city region, is that kind of thing. I mean, joining the dots in a way in which you can make this part of the world work. And that's really a different way of actually saying, this is what we're trying to do in Gauteng. So, oops, I think those are just my sort of preliminary words, but let me get into the presentation. Let me just navigate. Okay, so I think, oh yes, I just wanted to say that in terms of my presentation, it's very long. I'm not going to bore you with lots of detail, so I'm going to flip through things very quickly, but I just want people to get some sense of it. I did intend to cut down the slide. I didn't quite get around to doing all of it, so I'm going to skip over a few as well. But I just really want to make a couple of sort of key points. And that's also in tandem with what I just said about the bridge, is that I want to talk about the idea and synthesis of regions learning network. I want to talk about the idea of the Gauteng City region and its place in the national space economy, and some ideas that the Premier and the Gauteng provincial government have put on the table to basically transform the Gauteng City region going forward. That's the essence of what I want to say. Some of it is controversial. I know we've had many debates about corridors and mega cities and all of that. So I'm going to throw that in just to kind of make things a little exciting, and certainly we can discuss and debate some of those issues going forward. So okay, I mean everyone knows where we are within the country, but I think this map is quite important. Gauteng is 1.4% of the land area. What you see is not only Gauteng, it's also the Gauteng City region. So the hinterland that we speak about in terms of the Gauteng City region. So most notably in the northwest, the sort of the platinum mining belt around Rustenburg, the coal mine fields to the east in Mpumalanga and Sasolburg and so on in the northern Free State. But the red areas are basically a core Gauteng, and those three big circles that you see are basically Joburg, Tshwane, and ERLN. And they represent the kind of relative sizes and populations of each of those entities. And I think it's important also because the point that we will keep making is that we have 3 of the 5 largest metros in the country, and they are contiguous. And they're part of one urban system. And I think that's really important. So we can't think of Joburg and Tshwane and ERLN as separate entities. They work and function very much part of the urban system. And of course, other parts of the Gauteng City region, the city in Western districts and the like. And you can see it's 1.4% of the land area, 36% of GDP, a significant contribution to Africa's GDP and to exports. This is a very messy map, but a typical kind of planning map with different land uses. I'm not really going to take you through that. Another take on densities, and you can see those peaks and where they actually occur in the center of the urban system. And these are some of the specific challenges that we have with our spatial profile: very sprawling urban structure, low densities, polycentric nodes but poorly connected, segregated areas, and certainly this car orientation that we want to begin to break down. Transportation, you can see what happens is that within the urban system, these are the commuting sort of patterns, often within metro or district areas, but very often across them as well. This is the accessibility to public transport. This is our demography. So we're kind of edging towards a quarter of the country's population. We weren't that before. At one stage, KZN had the single largest population. We're now sitting at the current estimates at about 13 million out of a total of about 55 million in the country as a whole. And you can see KZN is about a fifth, and we almost a quarter. So basically, that's the kind of thing that's happening. And if you look at this particular table, I'm not sure we can read it, but essentially what it's saying is that Gauteng and to some extent the Western Cape are the only places where there is significant net in-migration. Whether the figures are right or wrong doesn't really matter, but I can tell you that we know that, look at it, in the 5-year period, 500,000 people from 2001 to 2006, another 500,000 in the next 5 years, and another 500,000 going forward. So in the last 15 years, 1.5 million people have actually come in essentially from other provinces, and you can see the decline in many other places, or not particularly significant movements inwards. And this is the growth in particular places, not surprising, Joburg and Tshwane experiencing the most. What we also see with these population pyramids is basically the fact that there is a bulking out of the population at different points, but people are also staying a lot more in the urban system. This is the kind of thing which I've already spoken about in terms of the spatial structure, the location of mega projects, public housing programs out on the periphery, and you can see the gated communities in the urban core. We'll skip that. We know household densities are increasing. We have a particularly, I think, quite high levels of excess in terms of services. Then moving on to the economy, I think that the other thing that we gratified by is the fact that we have a reasonably diversified economy. But of course, business and financial services is increasing, certainly in value-added terms. This is, so if you look at in the left-hand map, basically what you see in the red and yellow and green parts is basically the intensity of economic activity, and that, not surprisingly, is in Joburg, Sandton, and parts of Tshwane. I'm going to skip these ones. Distribution of household income in nominal terms has increased, but there is a decline in disposable income over time as well. The normal story, there is a long-term trend in relation to the decline of inequality, but still very, very unacceptably high, as you know, and you know all the debates with Piketty around and so on, in terms of inequality, a key issue. Some of our key environmental concerns, and basically, so what we say, if you look at the Gauteng story, is that we emerged as a city region, and we argue that certainly over the last 2 decades, very significant levels of economic activity, but at the same time, coexisting social exclusion, poverty, and inequality. The population growth is placing a lot of strain on our infrastructure and our ability to provide adequate shelter. But also we're saying that what are the kind of governance arrangements in this part of the world, and part of what when we're talking about is how do we respond to that. I think the one point to make though is that, and this is a fine balance, that we are not talking about Gauteng exceptionalism. We're not saying we're the greatest guys under the sun. What we are saying is that there is a specificity to Gauteng that we want, that we think is important to recognize, and how, and given that recognition, how, what is it that needs to be done by ourselves and other actors, government and non-government government actors as a whole. So we know the story around ADP, certainly for this audience, and this is our very high-level vision statement about being globally competitive, socially inclusive, and sustainable. Now, this is the 10-pillar program that the Premier put forward, and I'm just going to take you through them very quickly now, and I will sort of outline it. But you can see there are a couple of things, and that's why it's called transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization. So those are the three central themes or kind of big issues that the Premier has focused on. So the one area of transformation on both economic, spatial, and social transformation, so that's one component, and state and governments as well. So sorry, those four. Then this idea of modernization. So it's not transformation, modernization are not the same things. It's how we kind of be up to date, so to speak. And that applies to the economy and public service and human settlements, as well as public transport, and then this sort of reindustrialization agenda, both within Gauteng, as well as thinking about the kind of role in relation to the rest of the continent in terms of where we are located. Now, again, I'm just going to flip through a lot of this stuff. But maybe just a couple of things. On this economic transformation agenda, the Premier has staked a very substantial part of his own reputation in saying that what he wants to do, well, what he's going to achieve in 5 years, I'm not sure, but I think that there's a lot in relation to this idea of revitalization of township economies, or maybe vitalization of township, if you like, because they have historically been very much dormitory areas. And if you look at Gauteng and where it's spread out all over the place, we certainly cannot allow them just to continue in their own role. Of course, the core economic areas will have to be retained and retained, but how do we begin to rethink their role? So one idea is basically say, let us put in a lot in relation to township economies and see what is it we can do, build entrepreneurship, localized production, enterprise development, etc., etc. So, and there are many ideas, both in terms of like doing micro-type of economic activities, but also, what are the possibilities for supply chains to other industries in other parts of the space economy. Then the other issue is spatial transformation. Now, this doesn't really capture it all, because there's a whole kind of spatial development framework story that we can go into. But really, the idea is that is kind of akin to what I was just saying. Is that how do we begin to understand the articulation between essentially two things? One is that understand the whole, understand the idea of the city region, but also understand the kind of the specificity of the different parts. And conveniently, well, there are 5 different zones. And in each of those zones, and I'll cover that later on, there are particular kinds of initiatives that we're basically going to be focusing on. So, but again, in the interest of time, I don't have time to go through all of that. Then a number of interventions on the social area in terms of education. I think on education, the one thing we are saying is that Gauteng has done relatively well, vis-a-vis what's happening around the country. And we need to consolidate and sustain it, going forward. And certainly, so you notice if you've been and you're talking about basic education, of course, but you see some of the initiatives coming through around the modernization agenda, the e-classrooms, etc., that the MEC has been championing more recently. In health, I think we do acknowledge there are serious problems. As we know, there's no secret about that. But how do we actually begin to consolidate that stuff? Also understand from medium to long term, how does that knit up to the NHI? Because the issue in Gauteng is that we've got, I think we've got 5 academic hospitals. And people from Mpumalanga, Free State, Northwest, and other provinces surrounding, and countries like Zimbabwe actually come for health services to Gauteng. We can't turn people away. Some like people from the north, I think from the Northern Cape, would get onto a bus overnight, come here, go to Chris Harvard at Garden Hospital and basically get services. So it's not just a provincial issue, it's basically a national issue. And that's why we think that, for our tertiary healthcare to be tied up to the national system is actually a correct one. Safety, I think I think there is a big concern. Certainly, I think we've seen the regression in the crime stats last week, and that needs to be addressed. Social, I'm going to skip all of that. In relation to transformation of state and governance, I think one of the most exciting things that the Premier has embarked on recently is this whole idea of telesign service delivery. And again, that's a whole kind of presentation on its own, but it's really very much a sort of a bottom-up approach, stitching together the service delivery response of municipalities and provincial government departments, and basically setting up a system to monitor and respond to service delivery issues and queries and so on. And there's been a very extensive public participation program that has in fact been underway. I think it's something that we really want to sort of further develop and replicate going forward. And that's related to the participatory governance issues as well. I think that in relation to, I did make the point about how do we build the Gauteng City region. Now, the one time when I was speaking at another platform, I said, actually, and this is a really important point, that what I want to do is to build the Gauteng City region bottom up. The problem for a long time has been, when we look at this idea of Gauteng City region, we say, oh, well, what about Rustenburg? What about... Yes, it's part of the functional economic region. However, what we want to do is to say, what's the kind of 80% story? The 80% story is basically the three contiguous metros. I mean, there were 10 million people, of the 55 odd million people live in those three metros, just in the three contiguous metros. And if you take the economic contribution, also very significant. So let us stitch and begin to see the articulation between the metros, but also certainly the surrounding districts. We're not leaving them out. It's not kind of about marginalizing the so-called periphery, but it's basically how do we think about, I mean, much greater sort of efficiencies and linkages. So, for example, if you take, we have a big conundrum at the moment. Conundrum is that the national legislation, for example, says that transport authorities are at a municipal level, right? But transport in Gauteng, is the interlinkages are so significant that we can't really talk about it at municipal level. So we have to begin to think about how do we stitch all of that together in a way which actually kind of really oil that entire system. And also, I mean, I've also said this on other platforms. Even if you think about the incremental way in which the BRT systems of Joburg, Sonic, ERLN have developed in that order, have been incremental and sometimes with different standards. So, so the point we're making is, and those are very good examples of the problems that one finds. But the same thing can be said about planning, the same thing can be said about economic development, and so on and so on. So, I mean, without going to, what we are saying is that we're going to be establishing certain institutions. Aside, well, the one thing that has been on the table for a long time has been this province of metros. It's not going to happen, as you know. The city building is off the table now. The demarcation board has decided that it's not a metro, fine. And I think it's probably the same thing will happen in the West End. But can we have then, basically single-tier municipalities? They're going to be metros in terms of the definition. And certainly from a housing point of view. So the other issue that we're looking from a governance point of view is an asymmetric approach. I mean, we can't just have symmetry in the country where there is a lot of differentiation. So how do we kind of push some level of an asymmetric system? But also, on top of that, a number of institutions which will basically build the city region. So, a wider transport authority that actually takes in the functional transport area. We do have some existing ones. We're also going to, there's this idea of a housing planning authority, which also is a bit controversial, but is something that we are going to be putting on the table quite soon. The other, in terms of, there's a strong commitment, and I'm not going to say this, but I can tell you there is a strong commitment to addressing the problems of corruption and so on. The one thing is this transparent open tendering system, which we have piloted already, and which we're going to roll out on a big basis. Literally, transparent, people can come in and see what happens while the tender committees are actually deliberating. So it takes a lot of time, creates a lot of issues, but it's one way of really addressing. It's one way, it's not the only way, but certainly we'll go somewhere into addressing those issues. The modernization issues, I think there's a strong commitment also in relation to rollout of fiber, make it a lot more accessible, but also looking at particular areas in which we can move towards a sort of smart city region idea, and some of which, like for example, the e-learning things are already being rolled out. Whole issues around energy security, water and sanitation, etc. On human settlements, these are probably the controversial ones, and we can talk about it, but we do have certain realities. The realities are that we do have some of these developments like State City and so on, and how do we begin to integrate them into the urban system? And if there are developments like, that are coming online, like for example this massive model thinking development by Zendai, how do we make those things actually more accessible and within less meters and so on, because it's very, very centrally located. So it's not like we just kind of rubber stamping. From our point of view, we say how do we actually engage with these things. We also welcome the investment. So we also ensure that we mitigate against the negative consequences of these things. Okay, I'm gonna just see. Okay, on public transport, there are massive initiatives. Obviously, there's the extension of Gautrain. There are a whole lot of stuff happening, feasibility studies and so on. So over the next couple of years, we're going to be testing whether or not the extension of Gautrain is feasible. Additional rollout of BRT, but certainly I think the lessons of Joburg in terms of how to densify along the corridors and so on, and increase carrying capacities is something that we need to do. There's big issues around freight and logistics. Certainly CBD in the next couple of years is going to be fully saturated, so they're already planning with Transnet to look at a number of other alternatives. In particular, Tambo Springs and Central Lane. And then as far as reindustrialization is concerned, consolidation of the transport sector, look at issues around the health economy, think about agro-processing as a particular area, and then a number of other sectors we should look at just now. And then these are some of the initiatives in relation to, and I think, and I'll say this, that this is still very much work in progress. We haven't, I think, kind of really nailed it down. So we really need to think about how we actually going to achieve this particular pillar. So breaking these up into the different components, the zones, called incorrectly corridors, I think that's another issue. But I'm just going to take you to this map. So if you look at this is the West Rand, and these are some of the big things that we're looking at in relation to the West Rand. So obviously, some economic stuff, some big housing developments. The Kagiso Industrial Park is basically the sort of township economy revitalization initiative, and the same with Hudson. The issues around Lanseria and Seferfontein are being discussed at the moment in the big developments. The issue, there are kind of infrastructure issues there, but it's something that we're saying that it will unlock the potential of the northwest quadrant of the city region. Okay, I'm not going to go through these. Similar in the southern part of the province. This is, as you know, is also like the West Rand, West Rand mining industry has been devastated. in the south, the steel industry has been a big problem. It's also kind of going south, figuratively speaking. But there are some initiatives which we put on the table, which are, for example, rethinking the role of Sedibeng given its location. So certain issues around logistics hubs, and also I think using the existing infrastructure for human settlement, like this new Vibrant River City initiative, to inject some new things into the urban system and furthering Savannah City and so on. On the eastern side, which is Ekurhuleni, is the big story is the Erythropolis. The Erythropolis is not just the airport and the surrounds. The Erythropolis means a much wider thing around supply chains and a number of industries that support it, but also human settlement development and so on. So it's also a massive program, which is a 25-year program that they currently sort of finalizing at the moment. And then, but also the location of both Tamil Springs and Central and those logistics hubs basically move to that part. Because in fact, the problem with City Deep is that it's right in the city centre of Johannesburg. So you mean that all these trucks and so on coming there actually doesn't make sense. You need that kind of thing more a bit out in the periphery so that you don't kind of congest an already congested area. This is, for example, the expansion of Gautrain in the east. The north is Tshwane, where we are, and so Tshwane is also positioning itself as the capital city, and so you see a number of initiatives around this kind of notion of a capital city. In so-called new cities, some big housing developments, and some major sort of industrial activity as well. And Joburg. So Joburg, I mean, again, I think I mentioned some of those new nodes, if you like, and how I think what we're saying is that how part of the challenge, and this is part of the kind of spatial, the emergence of new thinking on how do you organize space in the central parts of Gauteng, which are basically where you have your historic right areas and of course your key commercial nodes. How do you actually kind of, there's a sense that these areas actually are not permeable for the poor. And how do you begin to sort of change the nature of these areas?
Ensure coordination amongst various planning and infrastructure and governance institutions that exist in the Mumbai metropolitan region. There are two reasons why it works to reasonable extent. One is that the political system in India is such that the state government is led by a particular political party, and often the municipal governments are led by a different party. There are 17 municipalities here, each having its own elected representation. So the MMRDA as an institution being owned by the state government acts as a tool in the hands of the state government to leverage, to score some points against the various municipal governments. So when Mumbai municipality is ruled by a different party and state government by a different party, the state government uses the finances available at the regional level and the institutional setup of institutions like MMRDA to achieve something in the city of Mumbai that the municipality is probably unable to achieve for a long period of time. So to settle that kind of gain political strength, they use this institutional mechanism. So that actually tells us that there is immense political backing by the state government, which is higher level of government than municipality. So that kind of ensures that municipalities don't actually fight with the state government as much as they do with each other. And the second thing is MMRDA, for the same reason, is allowed to actually capitalize the gains from land leases. So the immense financial strength available with these regional institutions is something that all the municipalities and the other institutions are looking forward to get a share of. As a soft loan or even grants, or to get a municipal project executed by MMRDA by proving how it can be regionally efficient. So even though in the first few years of our existence there used to be some amount of conflict and not really looking up to regional institutions for support, increasingly with the increased financial situation of these institutions, the municipalities and other institutions started looking up to accessing regional funds and accessing regional development activities in their own jurisdictions. So this has actually kept them away from challenging each other, but rather look up to a piece of the cake. So that way, when they are not able to communicate with each other too much, and they are actually able to communicate with regional institutions in a much better manner, that is something that is ensuring coordination. When 4 municipalities are not able to talk to each other, MMRDA is able to talk to 10 of them and then bring them around a common objective and a common project. That's, I think, is the key. Secondly, about the industrial, the wish to get industry back to the region, in many ways than one, it has been proven that the death of manufacturing industry in Mumbai and its surrounding areas has created a lot of social tensions, unrest, and the land that is released from industries has been subjected to a lot of real estate speculation, which has resulted in crime, and the government is influenced to tweak the rules in a manner that the real estate goes into the benefit of some hands. So on the whole, the impact of receding manufacturing industry has had very negative impacts on the region. That's one part of the story. The second part is it has not greatly actually achieved anything that we can be so proud of. While tertiary sector, particularly in the IT sector, has given a lot of opportunities to Indians both within India and outside, it has not actually translated to trickling of those benefits to all sections of the society in terms of employment and the assured jobs. And the pseudo richness that is created with the very highly paid tertiary sector jobs in the banking sector, in the finance sector, and in the IT sector have actually given lot of spending attitudes rather than saving attitudes, and which has again had its own negative impact on when people did not have very long-term assured jobs in those sectors. So on the whole, it has been understood that manufacturing cannot be driven out like this for long-term sustenance of even tertiary sector, because you need manufacturing to be able to service through tertiary sector. So I think it's a very conscious decision or perception by the state government and the local governments and the metropolitan level institutions that there is a lot more to bringing back manufacturing than just looking at it. Benefits are giving them out. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashid.
Well, firstly, I don't really accept questions from Roland because, he was my boss at Planet and the city of Joburg. So if I give the wrong answer, it's his fault because he didn't kind of mentor me properly. So I'm joking. Roland, the issue around, you're right. I think that, but what we've done, and I said in my presentation, is that the emphasis has been on building the city region, from bottom up. So maybe it's a kind of a sleight of hand in a way, but really, but I do think it's important because the just cooperation, say, amongst the cities themselves is a challenge, and in some ways you're saying that needs to be prioritized. there are different areas of sort of cross-border, if you like, issues in relation to transportation, in relation, like for example, development on the northern banks of the Free State, where it abuts sort of City Bang. There's some ideas around development. So, so you're not just developing just the one part. You have more kind of a holistic approach to development and so on. So there are issues that we need to pick up on. I mean, it's true, and that to try and foster cooperation with provinces is not, because we're dealing with 3 provinces that are directly involved and 4 provinces that actually abut Gauteng. So, and often, I mean, the components which basically just abut are very small and very far from the provincial capitals and so on. So they may not necessarily see it as a priority either.
I don't know whether you'd like to have a last few words.
There was something I wanted to in presentation, but that I could not, was about the long-term sustenance of regional actions of the legislative framework. Our global experience shows that regional led by statutory processes and they're led by more strategic intervention. Interventions actually debate on whether regional level regions should be more specific, defined, and whether regional level institutions acting as responsible agencies for their development should be a good idea, particularly in view of long-term economic.
Okay, thanks very much, Uma. We really appreciate the time that you've taken to do the video and to provide the inputs to us. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rashid.